Today I want to talk about step 2 in the game design process, and I'll review a little bit at first. So first of all, remember that the goal here is to make games. We want to make games that you can have fun with and that we can share with other people. So step 1, I said, was to learn to play mini games, and we did that by watching some videos. I showed you these pictures and we talked about how nowadays the designer's name shows up on the box. It's a good time to be a designer. There are lots of new games out there, lots of interesting ideas. We watched some videos, and I would encourage you to keep watching some videos to learn the games, or even look up the game rules online and just read them. So for step 2, this is what I'm suggesting that you do. Start a game design notebook. I want to talk about this in detail. I'll give you some examples. Here is a picture of my notebook that I used to use years ago. I had a couple spiral notebooks I would write in. And you can see here I was sketching pictures of spaces or maybe the cards in some way. And then eventually I started doing this on a computer. I had a Word document that had around 200 pages full of ideas. That was my game design notebook for years. And then recently I've been keeping one on my iPad that I can write by hand, just like my original one. I like that because then I can sketch a picture if I need to. So in your notebook, when you start this, however you want to keep your notebook, write down every idea you think of that could be a fun game. And here are some ways to get ideas. First of all, you get ideas from playing other games. When you're playing a game and something strikes you as fun, you might want to just change that a little bit and you can think of your own game. And if you do that, it's a good idea to write down the game that you were playing so that you can give that designer credit. So you're not just taking the idea without giving it credit. Another thing I do is I picture people having fun, or I look at people who are having fun and I ask myself, what is fun about that? What are they enjoying? And sometimes that can lead to a fun game. And then here's a way that my friend uses. He says, what game do you want to play right now, but you can't because it doesn't exist yet? And then he uses that as a starting point to make his own games. So here is a quote from Einstein, and many years ago I found this quote and I liked it. So I wrote it in my design notebook, and eventually that became this game idea that I had. It was called What's It To You, and it was a party game. I played it with my friends and we were having a good time with it, so we actually made a better version and we sold some. It got picked by Games Magazine as one of the top party games of the year. So then we published 3,000 copies of the game this way. A person in Florida found it and he liked it enough. He helped me sell it to another company and they published it as Oh Really. And I had a guy from Korea email me and say that he liked the game. It went that far from an originally just being this quote from Einstein to a game that sold all over the world. So that's why I'm a big believer in the game design notebook. It starts with those core ideas, but here are some important things about ideas that you need to know. Somebody said once, ideas are like air. They're everywhere. You just have to start noticing them and you'll get ideas. Take them for what they're worth. Just because you get ideas, it doesn't mean you've got $1 million game coming along. It's just like air. They're everywhere. What matters is what you do with that idea. The way to get a good idea, some people say the way to get a good idea is to have a lot of bad ideas. So remember, I had a notebook of 200 pages of ideas. Out of that notebook, only a few turned into decent games. So you want to have a lot of ideas so that you get some good ones. It's hard to have an original idea. I get excited about some of my ideas for games, and then I find out the game, somebody's already done a game like that. It's been out for years sometimes. So it's really hard to come up with an idea that nobody else has come up with. And also, I come up with ideas, and then I work on them a little bit, or maybe I just write them down, and then somebody comes out with a game later that uses that idea. And that just happens. Sometimes you got to work fast on your ideas because people will steal them even before you can complete them. Of course, they didn't really steal them. They just had the idea too. So it does take some work to get an original idea. And remember that ideas by themselves aren't worth much. I always think of it this way. Here's my idea, and an idea is like a seed, but what people want is really like fruit that they could eat. So imagine that if this was the seed over here at the idea, there's a lot of work that goes in the middle here between idea and good game. And what people want is that fruit at the end. This is what people pay for. This is what companies will pay for, is the good game. So having the idea itself doesn't mean much. So many of my friends will come up to me and say they have an idea for a game, and they think they're going to make $1 million on it, and they want me to do all the work. The idea itself is not what matters. So what makes the difference is if you're going to turn it into a good game. So get your design notebook, write down every idea you can think of, and then have a few of them that you think are promising, and those are the ones that you'll keep developing in your notebook. I will say more about this later, but here are some questions you could ask yourself as you're working on your designs. You can kind of flesh it out, and you can decide what the goal is, what your goal is, what's going to come with the game, who wins, and so on. We'll talk about that in a later video. So right now, my strong suggestion is you get a notebook. It might be a spiral notebook. Maybe you'll use Google Docs. You can put pictures of hand-drawn or handwritten notes in your Google Docs too, by the way. So if you just happen to write your idea down on a napkin, for example, you can take a picture of that and save it in your Google Docs notebook, and you'd have it at your disposal anytime you need it. Sometimes I just use the Notes app on my phone or on my iPad, so you could even just use that. All I'm saying is have something that when you get an idea for a game, you can write it down immediately, and you won't lose that paper or that file. You'll always be able to come back to it in case you need it later.